So yeah, I mean, I think that having laid that kind of map out, bring us back to kind of where we left off on that story with you guys on Sickle, and kind of just let's start diving into the details.
Cool. Yeah. So, like I said, day one, we got to Sickle. Everything was going cruiser. I was like, man, big walling's so easy. This is fun. This is great. We get like no sleep that night, get woken up super early, bunch of people at the base. So we're like, all right, let's just go. We pack up, and we just start going. And Evan was going to lead because I led that first day. Evan was going to lead everything from Sickle. And we were kind of just, at first we thought we were going to break it up in like sections of like 5 pitches so that we'd each get the same amount of pitches, which we ended up switching to more of like a time-based system. So each person led for a certain amount of time, because Evan can share his day once he gets into that. But some pitches can take forever. Like Great Roof is like, I don't know how long it took, but probably like 2 hours. You know, it's just like the longest pitch ever. It's all aid unless you're Crusher. So to do it like on a time basis, it makes way more sense, because then if somebody gets a super easy 30-minute pitch, it's, you know, you're at least leading the same amount of time that way. But anyways, yeah, I mean, Evan can go from leaving Sickle. That was all him.
I'll tell you when the nose started getting real fun.
Day two.
So first off, I'm going to rewind a little bit. We're on our way, or I think it was before we took off to head to Yosemite. I called up my buddy Casey Stone, the dude who taught me how to climb. I usually just call him randomly and I tell him, hey, I need some stoke when I'm like nervous about something. And I was like, I'm nervous about the nose. And he's like, what are you nervous about, dude? You got this. And I was like, well, I'm scared I might get off route. And he kind of like, it wasn't like a rude laugh, but he like kind of laughed a little bit. And he's like, oh, you're good, buddy. It's the nose, you know, you're not going to get off route. And if you do, you're just going to be in a crack parallel to the crack you're supposed to be in. No big deal. I had actually been having nightmares leading up to the nose about dying on El Cap, which, you know, probably was a result of the anxiety that I was feeling, and that just got like, you know, worse and worse the closer I got to the nose. I was also feeling more and more inspiration at the same time, but yeah, I was definitely pretty anxious. So, you know, he's like, oh, if you get off route, you just swing back over into, you know, a parallel crack and you're back on route. So day two, we take off from Sickle Ledge. It's my turn to lead. First thing that happens is I pendulum too far over into a kind of a wider crack than what I should have been in. And we were trying to be really specific with like gear. You know, we heard that, you know, typically if you're trying to like French free, one of the things that trips people up is they have the full rack on them. It kind of weighs you down and it doesn't really inspire you to want to French free or free anything. So we were trying to be really, really beta specific with gear, and I did not have a number 4 on me. And I found myself basically in a position where the only gear that I really had underneath me was about maybe 15 feet below me. And it was 2 micro cams placed on the left and the right side of a chalk stone that was wedged in between this wide crack that was probably about somewhere between number 3 and number 4. And I get up above that and I'm like, shit, I need a number 4. And there's a free move that I have to pull. Since I don't have a number 4, I can't aid it. And it seemed like it was going to be like 5'10" plus or something, in my mind at least. Anyways, I got stuck in like this like stance, and I was just like, the fear hit me. I was like scared. I was feeling the exposure. And I was like, this is not good. This is not a good start to my block of leading. And I must have stood in this position for, would you say, like maybe almost like 45 minutes or so.
Like half hour, yeah.
People were catching up to us. It got to the point where, you know, a couple of guys were starting to pass us because they, you know, knew what the correct crack to be in, which was to the left of me.
These were like NIAD parties, not like other multi-day parties.
Yeah, which you tend to get, you know, it's very possible to get past day 1 and day 2, people doing El Cap Tower runs. Dolt runs. Anyways, so it was like 45 minutes, and this guy was kind of catching up to me, and he's like, "Don't worry, dude, I'll bring you a number 4." Anyways, I couldn't wait that long. I felt like I was gonna fall, and I felt like it was gonna be a tremendous whip, and I did not think that chalkstone would hold. So I busted the free move and pulled it off. Should have just done it 45 minutes earlier.
Damn.
And it was a little spooked, but got up to the anchor, fixed Bryce, started hauling. He got up to me and he looks at me, he goes, all right, well, you ready for your next lead? And I was like, let's do this. Halfway between finishing my second lead, I don't know what did it. I don't know if it was the altitude. I don't know if I was sick and didn't know it beforehand, or I wasn't drinking enough water, but I swallowed and I felt something stuck in my throat, and it kind of freaked me out. And I started feeling like I was going to start choking, gave me a lot of anxiety. And so I'm thinking like, what the hell is going on? And I actually take my fingers and I reach into my throat because I kept trying to swallow whatever it was that was stuck in my throat, and it wouldn't go down, my throat. It just stayed on the outside of the wall. It was like closing, And so I stuck my finger down my throat and I felt like what felt like a big old flesh ball. And at this point, it'd been like 20 minutes or so, and I'm like freaking out and I can't say anything because I literally can't even speak, because every time I swallow, I try not to throw up. And I'm like gagging, and Bryce yells, "Hey, you okay, buddy?"
So meanwhile, I climb with him all the time, and I hear this noise I'm at the belay, and I'm hearing this noise that I've never heard him make. And I was like, and he's just like, ugh. And I was like, oh my gosh, like he's throwing up. Like he's totally throwing up there. And so we had our walkies, and I was like, hey dude, are you all right? And he's like,
the only thing that I could think of was my fucking throat is prolapsing right now. That's what it felt like. It was turning inside out, and it scared the living hell out of me. And suddenly it like clicked. I was like, oh my God, the premonitions and my nightmares were right. I'm going to die on El Cap right now. My throat is not supposed to be doing this. This is not normal. Yeah. This is like really serious. And I'm like gasping for air because every single time I swallow, I'm gagging. And so I'm getting like lightheaded. And
are you on lead or are you attached to something?
Yeah, he's on lead.
Yeah. On my second lead of the day.
At this point, his block, he's like, the first pitch I think was really quick, and then he's maybe on pitch 2.5, and it's been like 3 hours plus. Like on this pitch alone was probably like an hour and a half at this point.
Yeah.
So after a while, Bryce is just standing there hoping that everything's going to work out, and then maybe I'm just puking and get it all out of my system and going to continue. Or maybe he's wondering if maybe we're going to need a rescue or something. But I couldn't really communicate that well on the walkie-talkie because every single time I tried to talk, I'd just gag again. So I started drinking water, and I tried to swallow a little bit less. And I mustered up the courage and the energy to continue on the pitch after a while. Finally, I fixed Bryce, and he gets up to me, and I open my mouth, and there's this little thing that dangles from your throat. It's called the uvula, right? Uvula. I always say this wrong. And the thing had swollen up to like this, maybe even like this big.
It was
huge.
I saw the picture of it.
He like asked me, he's like, can you look in my throat and see like what? And I was like, sure. It was like the size of a thumb, like
wow.
Just so swollen and huge, and like laying on his tongue. Like that's how big it was. It was just like flop down on his tongue. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, I've never seen anything like that. Like that is insane.
I also backing up a little bit before I finished that pitch, after I realized, come to the conclusion that, oh my God, the premonitions were right. I'm going to die on El Cap. I'm looking around and I'm like, well, at least I'm on the nose. It's not a bad place to die. And then I remember thinking, no, dying sucks no matter where you're at. It doesn't matter that I'm on the nose right now. I don't want to die. Anyways, then I got the energy, got up and had Bryce take a look. And he like immediately knew what it was. He was like, I'm pretty sure that's uvulitis.
Or no, I had just said Mandy, because Mandy actually had like a super bad sore throat, and her uvula got really swollen also. So I was like, oh, that's crazy. Like Mandy had just had that like a month and a half ago, but hers was nowhere near the size of like his. But I knew that like something like that's possible because I had just seen that. So anyways.
So he tells me I got uvulitis possibly. Possibly that it could be that.
So your stepdad gave us that term. But
yeah. Okay.
Evan, at that point, I was like, dude, all right, like, hey, is it cool if I just take back over on lead? Like, you need to just chill as much as possible. Like, let's get to let's get to Dolt Tower because we're like a couple pitches from Dolt. I'm like, once we get there, we'll be on a nice ledge. You can easily rappel from Dolt if we had to bail. But at least at that point, we can get like set up a little bit, have a mini break, see what's going on, evaluate the situation. And so that's what we did. We swung leads. I took back over. We cruised up to Dolt. I think like by jogging and trying to take like a more moderated pace and like really taking it easier, like the swelling was going down.
At some point before we got there, though, it was determined that there was a possibility that I had uveitis, and I was so disoriented, and as you could tell, I'm still having trouble pronouncing it correctly. I'm not really great with medical terms, but I was so disoriented, I started calling it vulvulitis. And so in the process of heading up to Dolt, we got passed by quite a few people, and people would come up and they'd be like, "You okay, bud?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I got vulvulitis." And I must have said that to like 6 different people, and none of them had the heart to tell me that I don't have a vulva. Bless their hearts. When we finally got up to Dolt, I called my stepdad, who's a doctor, and instead of, saying, "Hey, I need you to tell me if we should continue or not," I said, "Can you tell me about this? Does this sound like uvulitis?" Well, I think I said vulvulitis. And which he didn't even have the heart to tell me, like, "You're going to be okay. You don't have a vulva." And I said, "I want to know as much as I can about this so I can tell if I'm going to be okay. Has anybody died from this as far as you know? What tends to treat it?" And he said, some ibuprofen, some Claritin would definitely do you some good. And so...
Yeah, he thought he was just like, that just sounds bizarre. He's like, usually, like, you have tonsillitis and then it spreads to your uvula or...
flu can do
or
it too.
Some other symptom that causes, some other ailment that then causes that to get swollen. But like for Evan, it was just that, and it was extremely swollen. So it was just super weird, random freak thing.
I also lost quite a bit of energy in the process, so I don't know if maybe I did have some symptoms of the flu without realizing it, because I definitely felt much lower energy, but that could have also just been that day 2 just took a lot of energy out of me.
Really stressed. It's swollen. Yeah, that's a lot for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, wild.
I was really hoping you were going to be like, and I started hitting the vape and it just went away right away.
I knew I shouldn't, but when you're more stressed than you've been, than you could picture yourself being, you're going to need nicotine, right?
Yeah.
I tried to minimize it though, and I tried to drink a lot of water. Yeah, and the thing was still swollen until the last day on the nose. The swelling went down significantly every single day. I took lots and lots of ibuprofen. Well, I mean the appropriate amount, and and then just made sure I hydrated really well. But I mean, at that point, it was like, I kind of realized that if we were going to continue up, there was a good chance that Bryce was going to end up leading a lot of the pitches. I was hoping that wasn't going to be the case, and was just going to kind of take it on a pitch-to-pitch basis and see how I was feeling. But it's like, all right, we can continue up, or it's at that point, it's not very easy to bail down, especially with pigs.
Well, yeah, so we were at Dolt at that point, we kind of made the decision, like, do we bail or do we keep going? His stepdad's a doctor, so talking to him gave us, some more reassurance, and with taking a breather and some ibuprofen and stuff, it seemed like the swelling was already going down a bit, and he was, everything was seemed like it was getting better, not worse. So I was pretty adamant that I did not want to go down. Not that Evan was saying we should. It was just like, I just did not want to rappel with the pigs. I've done that, not because I bailed, but like getting off Leaning Tower, you have to do some rappels, and it just seemed like, it's just crazy though. You get up there and some random thing like a super sore throat, and you're like, what if his throat like does swell so much to the point where you can't breathe and drink water or something? Like that could,
and that would be
right
like an
there.
Emergent situation where it's like, hey, this guy's gonna die in like 5 minutes.
So it was this very serious, like few, plus the wind like kicks up like crazy, and it was like, that was the day that like I nicked my finger on my carabiner, and it just like was just a gusher for like the entire rest of the trip. But it was like my finger was bleeding like crazy. That's when we realized we didn't bring any climbing tape. Like the most basic, we didn't bring climbing tape, and we didn't bring a knife.
Yeah,
like
neither of us brought a pocket knife.
I had a knife in the car, I don't know how we didn't bring climbing tape, but anyways, it was just like everything all of a sudden went really bad. Like fingers bleeding like crazy. Evan's throat's swollen. It's super windy. And it was like, yeah, like I totally get why people would just have bailed right there. But I think what really reassured me was I was like, Evan, we've climbed a ton of things together. We've gotten through tons of situations. Like, I don't think this will be any different. Like we've overcome many things in our, history climbing together. And I think we can, as long as we're seeing progression in the right way and not like a regression and stuff's getting worse, like we can do this. So we collectively decided like, hey, we'll go to El Cap Tower. That's where we were planning to spend the night anyways. I was just going to lead the rest of the way there. And if we had to, like if he woke up in the morning and it was still super swollen or worse, we could always bail from El Cap Tower. So that was the decision we made, and it was the right decision for sure.
Yeah, even through all of that, I never wanted to bail at any point. But also at the same time, it needed to be understood that there was a chance that if we were going to continue up, that I wasn't going to be able to lead all the half of the pitches like I had planned, which bummed me out. But I think, bailing or getting a rescue or something would have bummed me out much more. And as long as it was still safe, it made sense to continue up.
Yeah, I think that's a pivotal moment. I think that it could have gone either way. And then that speaks a lot to the partnership you guys have and the goal that you guys had and the commitment level that you guys had to the climb. It's like, yeah, I mean, doing big stuff like this in the Alpine or on big walls, like you have to know your limits, but you also need to be okay with kind of pushing them a little bit as long as you're not, going to die. It's like you're putting yourself in this situation where it's not going to be comfortable and, everything can't be perfect. So it's cool that you guys kept going. And
I also couldn't decide that like we should continue going because I really want to get up El Cap, because if it was going to be dangerous to Bryce, that wouldn't be fair. So it's like when you're making these decisions, you can't just think about yourself. You got to think about your partner too. Yeah. You're thinking about your partner's family back at home and how important it is to them that, he comes back, things like that. So
yeah, that was our most serious, like, day or moment for sure. That was a long day. It was kind of a blur other than like what, it was not a blur, but it was
just a lot of intensity.
Just a lot, like a serious day. Yeah. And then, so we slept on El Cap Tower,
which is a good place to end up in a situation like that, by the way, of all the bivvies. That I think that made a big difference, that it was so plush.
And we got in at a decent hour, even though we had that long day. Like from Sickle to El Cap Tower is not terribly far. So we ended up getting there with probably like 9 p.m., which is like about when it's getting dark in late May. So we got like a full night's sleep that night. It was awesome. Didn't have the Naiad people waking us up at 4:30 that morning because you're much further up. And then first thing in the morning, leaving El Cap Tower, it's awesome. You have the Texas Flake, which is like a 50-foot chimney solo. There's like a bolt. There's like a single bolt you can clip if you want, but then the follower has to get inside the chimney. So it's better to not clip it, so you can just flick your rope on the outside and they can jug up the outside instead of having to deal with the clip bolt inside the chimney.
How far up? Is it like halfway up the chimney there's a bolt?
Yeah. It's probably like 20 feet to the bolt and another 25 feet past the bolt or something.
How secure is the chimney, and like what would happen if you did fall?
It's 5'9", and you would be seriously effed up if you fell. I mean, I'm not one to be like too afraid of exposure, but it was like pretty serious. I mean, I never felt like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fall. It was very secure, I guess. I wasn't gripped at all, but it was a very serious fall. Like, it's a 100% no fall zone. And then you pop up on top of Texas Flake. And then your next pitch is the Boot Flake. And that's where we encountered a couple Naiad parties that were like passing us right there. So we had to wait for one party that passed us, like doing the boot, or they did the boot. And then there was a party like waiting at the Texas Flake, because it sucks when you get passed even by a Naiad party, because then you're just stuck there.
Yeah.
And by the time like they get past you, which is not horribly long, but then there's another Naiad party right below you again. It's like, well, if I let you pass me again too, now I've just been sitting here for an hour and a half. Like, and even though you are going to be faster than me, it kind of sucks because now I just sat here. But it ended up working out. It's not like the worst place to get past. So we let those two naiad parties go past. And this is all me leading. I do the king swing. I climb up to Eagle Ledge, and then Evan does a big lower out, and he comes over to me. And after his lower out, he has to pull the rope because the rope, he did a lower out from the top of the boot flake over to Eagle Ledge. And he's pulling the rope, and it gets to the end, and it's just stuck. And he's like, dude, it's stuck. I'm like, okay, well. And he's like looking at it, trying to assess the situation, and it's like proper stuck. And I'm like, well, I could like climb up higher and we could try to pull it up. And he's like, no, because it's going through the chain and then coming down. So like, even if we got higher, it's like not going to help. And so we're like, dang, well, I mean, maybe we'll have to chop 40 feet of our rope off, like without a knife, because we didn't have a knife. So we're sitting there, we're trying to figure out what to do. And I was like, well, I'm religious. So I'm like, it's time to say a prayer, man. That's for sure. So I'm like, I know you aren't, but we're praying, man. So, because I've had a rope stuck in the past, and I'm telling you, like, we prayed and it came out. So we sit there, and I just like,
he asked me nicely. He's like, will you pray with me? And I was like, absolutely.
I'm like out loud. I just like, dear Lord, please, like, give us our rope back. Like, it would make it so much easier. And I decided that I was like, because we were at an anchor, and so I put a micro tracks on me so that I could like progress capture the rope one way and just really crank it down with a lot of leverage. And I'm just like feet against the wall, like I'm hauling with the micro tracks on my harness, just like leg pressing as hard as I can off of the wall, and just boom, it pops, and like our rope came out, and somehow the rope had like gotten a little knot in it, and it was like either stuck in the rings, like or the mussy or whatever's up. I think it's mussy's up there, but it was either stuck there or stuck in the crack, like down below. We still don't know, but that was like, oh, like, thank you. Like, we just didn't want to have to chop our rope and like deal with all that. So that was another like kind of close call. And
that's the worst feeling. Getting your rope stuck on a rappel or mid route, or pulling ropes back up after you rappel is the worst. I get so much anxiety. I'm trying to let it go because I feel like I create my own problems, but I feel like it's just the worst feeling ever.
Yeah, it was stress, like mini stressful situation for sure.
Did your vulva start swelling up again?
I was already traumatized. So the moment that like that rope got stuck, I was wide eyed, like, oh no.
Yeah, of course. You're just like right back into the PTSD. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So that was scary, but then after that, it's pretty smooth sailing. So not really, I guess. Then we do a couple more, another pitch or two, like pretty short, easy things, and then I did the Lynn Hill Traverse, and that's where I took the daisy whip, and I was like pretty surprised, like how bad my back was hurting after that. Like it sucks too, because like I would have loved to fallen on the rope, but this little micro offset cam held my whip completely. And if it had just blown, I would have just fallen into space. And yeah, it would have been like a 10, 15 footer or something, but it would have been perfectly nice.
So yeah, what was that kind of like step-by-step process like? Like, why did you whip on your daisy? Like, what was that like?
So when you're doing the Lynn Hill Traverse, it like it's a 12A free climbing section or 10D A0, which means you can use the bolts, and if you're aiding off the bolts, you still have to do like a 10D. There's still like 10D free moves that you have to do to get between the bolts. I guess I think that's like anyways, towards the end of it, there's this really nice jug rail, and I'm like standing at the very top of my daisy or my ladder, and I'm on this jug rail, but it was like above me, so I still couldn't see. So I was just judging based on like my finger, like when you're blindly placing a cam and you're just feeling, you're like, okay, that's probably like a 0.3. And so I grabbed the blue totem and I stuck it in like down in this jug flake, this little crack. And I put my my other ladder on it. And instead of like really bounce testing it good, I must have just not bounce tested good enough. So I test it, and then I start climbing up, and I get high enough to see, and I'm like, oh gosh, that piece is terrible. Like it was just super shallow. And as soon as I saw it and started climbing back down, it blew out.
Oh,
And so I was pretty much like max distance above my last piece, and fell on the my tether. I have like a 8mm dynamic rope using Petzl adjust.
Yeah.
But even 6 feet of or 4 feet of 8mm dynamic's not going to do anything on a factor 2. So it was pretty rough, but I shook it off, I guess, and kept going. And then
The real question, by the way, is that still an on-site?
no,
I think maybe.
I guess I didn't go on rope, but I would say I took the 8
yeah.
wall.
You're still just connected to the wall with 8 gear. You're just thrashing. Is this
Yeah.
still an onsite?
Yeah.
I mean, I never would have known he fell, and he had to tell me because I never felt the rope, tighten.
Don't recommend it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was some interesting things there. And then after you do that, you do some like lower angle stuff, and that was interesting too, because the topo says, oh, like leave the bag at this belay, and then you climb this climb, and then the next climb, and then you haul from there. So you like basically you don't want to haul like sideways on this low angle stuff. So you climb this pitch and then haul straight up there. But the topo says like leave the tag line with the follower. So we like did that, and then it ended up getting stuck and like some other shenanigans. So we had to like wrap back down that pitch, like, and then that's where we were going to swap leads, because we were one pitch before the great roof at that point. And Evan was like, the one thing he wanted to do was the great roof. So between like all the shenanigans and getting the bag, and then in the midst of this, I'm like, oh dude, I really got to take crap. But like we weren't at the bags. It was like the one time we left the bag somewhere else, and of course that's when I have to take a dump. Luckily I had like a wag bag with me. So I just like, find a nice like ledge. It's pretty low angle, and I use the wag bag, but I still don't have the haul bag or the poop tube or anything with me. So I just was like, whatever. And I like chugged my Nalgene, and I shoved my wag bag in my Nalgene and just like carried that up to the next pitch until we could haul. But yeah, so I threw that Nalgene away when I got done. And then
We did also run out of space in our poop tube.
oh yeah.
Ooh.
Somehow neither of us realized that the poop tube was way too small. I had it for like the south face of Washington column, because I wanted to do like an overnight, 2 days on the south face.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, oh, I already have a poop tube. And yeah, we both probably should have noticed we needed a bigger one.
What's the volume of the poop tube?
Yeah, what volume are we talking here?
It was like a protein.
No, like
Like
a pretzel, like you buy at Walmart. It's like that big. It's kind of square. It's got
Like a Pringles
handle
can?
on it.
I mean, we're talking like maybe 3 liters, like way too small.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 liters for sure.
And then what about piss? Like, are you guys just pissing on the wall? Are you guys pissing off the portal edge? What is that like?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time it's pretty windy, so you're just like, as a guy, you're just like a sprinkler, like just out in the wind, and it's just going off. But
Do you aim like towards the valley, or do you like try to hit the rocks so that you're not like showering people below you?
depends. I did both depending on like where I was, but many times the worst is when you're like going off of like El Cap Tower and you're like aiming south towards like the Zodiac and all that, but the wind is just like blowing it straight back up, and it's like there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I didn't think that I would have issues trying to figure out how to poop in a wag bag, because apparently I've been doing it wrong this whole time. I've been peeing in wag bags while I poop, and apparently you're supposed to pee first, but it was like not easy to figure out how to pee while you have to poop without pooping. And so I kind of struggled with that a little bit. I was pretty much scared that I was going to poop myself every time I tried to pee before pooping. And yeah, that was actually kind of a bit of a struggle. And
Could you like stand up and pee and then squat down to take a shit?
I mean, I thought this was like pretty basic.
maybe I might have some issues. I don't know, but that was nothing for me. Yeah, so a buddy of mine sent me like a link for like a little clip. It's like you can just kind of clip it off.
Oh, you clip your dick, huh?
Try that next time. I ended up figuring it out, luckily.
Nice. That's good. That's good. So what was the Great Roof like? That's such an infamous pitch. You always see pictures of it. It always still looks like such a fucking crazy thing to free climb. Like, what was that experience like going through that roof?
So, at this point I had started leading a little bit. My energy was kind of coming back, and, I think we knew we were topping out when we were planning on topping out. And so, once we got to the Great Roof, Bryce kind of looked at me, and I was more of concerned about getting up to the top at a reasonable time, not getting my leads in. So I wasn't even thinking about the possibility of me leading the Great Roof, even though that was like the pitch that I was most excited about. And Bryce looks at me and he goes, "You're up, dude. I need a break, and you should definitely lead the Great Roof." And I was just like, "Yeah, you're absolutely right." And first thing about the Great Roof is I cannot believe that people have freed that thing.
Mm.
I mean, it's stout just getting up to the roof itself, but the roof is, it's like straight vertical, and it's like, very small crack and like pin scars. And yeah, Lynn Hill doing that, being the first person to free that, is absolutely mind-boggling. And most people I think know that, but you don't really know until you're actually under that roof looking at it and trying to picture yourself freeing it. Very inspiring.
Or just like how long that pitch is and how big the Great Roof itself is. Like getting to the Great Roof is like 100 feet of, I feel like it was like 100 feet of like
At least.
just finger crack, like epic finger crack. And then, yeah, the Great Roof is just huge. So
Aiding is not difficult though, honestly. It was just a lot of fun. I really just enjoyed myself on the entire pitch. There was never any question as to whether or not I was going to take a whip or anything like that. There was like water seeping out of the roof, and that didn't create any issues whatsoever. The gear is pretty thin, but at that point, you've been on the wall for a while and you've been doing some aiding, and you're probably feeling pretty confident when you do have to aid, to the point where, like, if you're aiding a lot of the nose, you start leapfrogging pieces and back cleaning. And there are a few times where I was like, oh, I need to leave a piece. Like I am 40 feet above my last piece because I'm feeling so confident. And it's like easy to forget that you should leave some gear at times. At least it was for me.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, so
it's funny because I had the same experience where you just get so confident in your pieces because you've been weighting them and using them, and like you put in the cam and you're like, yeah, it's bomber, like of course it's good. And I would do the same thing, but when Evan would do it, I'm like, man, is he gonna like really back clean that and not like put another piece in?
Yeah.
But then when it was my lead, I found myself doing the same thing because you're just like, yeah, it's just so you trust your gear after using it so much.
So when you're like, are you working with 3 pieces? Are you working with 2? So like if you're resting on one and then you stand up on it to place the second, and then you weight that one and then you keep doing that. Like, is that the system for moving up with those on aid?
I think it just depends on what the terrain is like. I think you use like many different techniques. Sometimes you just clip your daisy. Like if you're leapfrogging 4s and it's splitter 4 for 50 feet or whatever, you just clip both your daisies into the number 4s, and yeah, like you kind of free climb, but you're just making sure that one is like weighted the whole time so that it's good. You push the other one up, and then you kind of stand up on that and just repeat.
Yeah.
But other times, yeah, you're working like 3 pieces because you might have like the rope clipped in as a just in case everything blew. But then as you get a new high point piece, you clip the rope up to like a new piece that's above you, and then you reach down below you and you take that piece out that you were using for pro, and now you're using it. You put it back on your harness because you want to use it later.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you're on top rope, but you also are like standing on a piece, let's say, because you're in your ladder on a piece. That's that's kind of the stuff, like I was saying, when you just like, the more you do it, the like quicker you are at navigating all of that, because it's always like different. I guess the terrain is like dictates what you're doing.
How much of the time would you guys say you were like a piece or 2 away from a huge, massive like fall?
Not often.
No.
Yeah, not often, but but probably like 3 or 4 times. And when you notice it, it's pretty noticeable. That's all. And you I found myself thinking about it a few times after, but it wasn't like,
I would say like 10% of the time you're like, or 10% or less, you're like, oh my gosh, I would take a huge whip if both of these pieces blew.
Yeah.
But when you're aware of it, when you're in that situation, you just know like, okay, I'm heads up right now. It's like,
Nice.
yeah. So Evan crushed the great roof.
I'm really glad that he encouraged me to do that, because I was getting, no matter what, you're not going to be bummed when you're on the nose unless things are going really, really bad. So I was having a great time, but I knew, that this was not the way that I envisioned it. The whole idea was, for me, I wanted it to be an on-site, me and whoever I'm going up with, it needs to be both of our first times going up, because that's more adventurous. And then, I just had certain expectations. I wanted to lead half of it. I wanted to, equal leadership roles. That's not how it turned out to be. However, I do think that I feel very lucky that Bryce was in the shape and was willing to lead so many of the pitches to get us up to the top, and was so capable. And I was also very grateful to be able to be a form of support for him. And I feel like I did a fairly good job of supporting him in that. And in return, he tried to support me whenever, I was able to lead a pitch after that whole ordeal on day 2. And I'll always be very grateful for that. That being said, I also need to go back and do it again and get 50% of the lead as well. I just feel like that's important to me for some stupid reason, but
Yeah, for sure, man. I think it's a cool, statement to the partnership, and it can't always be 50-50, and it's cool to have flexibility on both sides of the parties to. And I think it's, just as admirable to be the person to offer, taking over more of the weight, and also being able to recognize when you can't pull, 50% of the weight and not, cause that to be a dramatic situation, or, make that more stressful for the party in general. And so there's this give and take, and I'm sure in the future there'll be a moment where, you pull the weight more for Bryce than, he did here. So it's just it's good. It's a good lesson to have for sure.
yeah, I look forward to the opportunity one day to be able to, step up in a position of leadership. Hopefully not in like some sort of dire situation like that. But, by the end of the route, it ended up being, I think I led 7 and he led 21. So I got about a quarter of it.
Wow.
In the end, though, like more importantly, I think than who can lead how many pitches, like the vibe is really important, because we've been climbing for so long, and we've had our fair share of breakups and fights and drama with like just getting frustrated over stuff when you're doing that much hanging out. But on the nose, it just seemed like we just vibed really good. Vibe's not the right word, but if I was getting frustrated, we could communicate that. If he was getting scared or frustrated, he could communicate that. And I think we ran into this other duo that was like it was on our last day, and so we're like really close to the top. I was leading changing corners, which is another extremely long lead, and this party was like below us, and the guy's just like, hey, like, he's like yelling up to me like, oh, it's changing corners, like, and he's like Spanish or Italian or something, and I'm like, yeah, like, he's like, oh, like, fix the rope for us, like, and we were just, Evan was at the belay, so he ended up talking to him more, but apparently like they were just 2 random guys that met in the valley, and like the one guy was like a Spanish 513 crusher who was just like, oh yeah, let's go up here, and the other guy, I never met him, so I don't know, but it's like the vibes were so off with them, and like,
well, there was a huge communication barrier between them. They were having trouble communicating, when it was fixed, when it was good to jug, when it was, when it was time to release the bag. So basically Bryce was like at the top of a pitch, and I was getting ready to jug, and this guy gets up to me and he's telling me, he's talking on his radio, trying to tell his partner that he's good to jug, and his partner's like, huh? What? And it's taken him a while to actually figure out what he's trying to say. And so the guy says, hey, listen, can you like tag our rope up? Like just bring it up with you while you jug that and fix it to the anchor.
At first he wanted to fix he wanted to jug our haul line.
Yeah.
And this is like the belay above changing corners is like the most hanging belay on the entire route except for the last one. It's just like a dead vertical wall. There's nothing to stand on. There's no space for anything. And this guy's like wanting to jug our haul line so that they can like pass us. And I was just like, no, dude, this is like not the place to do this. If they are really wanting to pass us, that's fine, but like not here. So anyways, my point going back was just like, that did not seem like a fun experience at all.
Yeah.
And Evan and I, despite troubles and, you know, a few hiccups here and there, like we both had a great time. And so yeah, partner's huge. It was good.
For sure. I think that was like, I mean, what was the title of your podcast? The timeless nature of climbing partnerships.
Yeah.
It's like, it's definitely true, man. It's like, that's part of the reason why climbing is so special is because of those partnerships that we have and the meaning that we pull from them. So yeah, it's cool.
And not everybody gets that. You know, some people, they show up to the valley and they're inspired, but they don't have that partner that they've, you know, been able to synchronize with, I guess, or like that they know how to support and get that support that they need. And they still get after it. And it just makes me feel like very lucky to have like a real partnership.
For sure. No, I totally agree. I've heard of multiple situations from people where they're like, yeah, it's just kind of hard to find climbing partners. And I've been grateful enough to not have to experience that. So I definitely think it's an issue for some people for sure. And yeah, it's tough. I'm not sure what the solution there is.
Yeah. So I think we're like at that point, we're almost to the top. I've kind of got lost of where.
So he led Great Roof, and
He
then I'm
did
pretty sure
Great
changing corners is
Roof.
afterwards. What's that like?
Yeah.
Like, are you pulling on bolts through the moves? Are you like putting gear and bolts? Like, how involved was aiding through that section?
Changing
For
corners.
changing corners.
Changing corners, yep.
Well, let me zoom back or go down a little bit. So after Great Roof, there's like 2 more pitches to Camp 5, which is where we were going to bivvy that night. And I think I took over leading after Great Roof again. And I was like smoked that night. And I was like, I thought I got this blue totem stuck, and I'm just like trying to get it out. It's like, I'm like, dude, I just can't get this thing out. And he's like, just leave it. I'm like, if I can't get it out, I know you can't get it out in my head. And I'm like, I'm not going to leave it. And I'm like, my finger's bleeding everywhere again. And I'm like, whatever, I'll just leave it. And then so I finally get up and I get to where like Camp 5 is, and I'm looking at the topo and I'm looking at what I'm seeing. It's just like not the same at all. And I'm like, I know this like should be Camp 5, but I like cannot find these 3 bolts that is on the topo. And so I'm like, climb up a little bit and I like fix this bolt and I climb down and doing all this shenanigans. I'm like, I need to stop climbing. Like this is where we're going to stay that night. But it was like the one time on the trip where I was like, I'm safe, but I'm like, I'm going downhill.
Yeah.
So anyways, Evan ends up getting to the blue totem and he said it like comes right out. And then he like climbs up to me and he's like, oh, the 2 bolts are like right here, dude, that you've been looking for. I'm like, and he's like, you're just really tired, man. I'm like, yeah, no, I am. Like, and then like, I'm like, I just don't understand. Like, he's like, you're just really tired, man. I'm like, yeah, I know. And like, again, I keep like bringing it up and he keeps just saying like, you're just really tired, man. I'm like, okay, dude, I get that I'm really tired. Like, I'm effing up. I understand, but like, stop telling me that. Okay. And he's like, all right, cool, man. Like, glad you told me that. You're getting up, you know. So that's where like I was trying to lead into that with like the partnership and how important it is. And but anyway, so we set up bivvy at Camp 5. Next morning, I think I led all the pitches the last day.
Yeah. It was like, let's just get to the top.
Let's just get to the
Let's
top.
make sure we get up there today.
You're like 3 days in and you're not like over climbing, but you're ready to get to the top. Like you've gone through all these ordeals. You feel like it's close and you just got, you know, you just want to get up there.
You also really feel like you're on the nose on the 4th day. Like, I mean, on the way up, the day 1, day 2, day 3, you're looking up and you're like, it's not that far up there. I forget what the term is. You use like,
Foreshortening.
Foreshortening. Yeah. You know, it's like you're on it and you're like, oh, it looks like, you know, a couple of romps up to Keats, you know, or Whodunit or something like that. But then once you just keep going and it keeps going and stretching further and further, by the 4th day, you're like, oh, we are up here. We are on the nose. And
the exposure's like not like scary at that point, but you're like, whoo, like this is why the nose is. This is why you climb Mount Cap, because you are up here. It's cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fourth day, I just tried to blast through everything. I don't really think anything eventful happened the fourth day, to be honest. Like, I think it was just smooth sailing the whole day.
Lost to number 4.
Oh, yeah. A number 3 decided to jump off my harness. I was kind of in this like groove, and I wanted to go back clean a piece because it was like the rope, it was at the apex, and so the rope was like kind of pulling it into this crack, and so like I clipped a bolt and I like kind of down climbed, and as I was down climbing this groove, this number 3 just like jumps off my harness. I didn't even know, like I didn't even hear it, and Evan goes rock 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 rock, like, and I'm like, and he's like, hey dude, did you lose a number 3? And I was like, like, oh yeah, I did. I'm like, whoa, that's scary. I just dropped a number 3 from like 2,700 feet off the deck.
Wow.
And this Naiad party that topped out with us, I was like, did you guys happen to see a number 3 go flying by? And he's like, yeah, we totally heard it go whizzing by. I'm like,
Jesus Christ.
that's what, like, that was probably my biggest fear, was like getting hit by somebody else's gear, and
100%.
Yeah.
this
Number
number 3
asteroid
just
like firing down the face.
yeah, it's crazy. But that was probably the only eventful thing on the last day, and then we topped out, and as you're getting to the very end, there's like the final like bolt ladder basically, and it's just the most hero position you've ever been in, because you're like 2,900 feet off the ground, and you're on this like overhanging bolt ladder. And I have it posted on my Instagram, I think, but you're just like looking down, and it's like so cool to just be hanging over air, 2,900 feet of air. And that's when you're really just like taking it all in, and you're like, wow, like we climbed this and we're like topping out. This is pretty epic.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then after that, you just do like this short little traverse pitch, and then you're at the top, and you got to wait for your follower to jug up, and then shuttle your bags to the tree. And then the least enjoyable part of the whole climb is walking off
The descent. Yeah.
like.
So what was start to tree time?
That's a good question. Probably about 72 hours.
Okay.
I forgot to stop my my stopwatch, honestly. No, I don't think we were really thinking about it, honestly. I'm sure that Bryce can figure out if he thinks about it.
Yeah, I think it would be because we probably we started around like 5 p.m. We started at 6 p.m. on Sunday, and we finished around 6 p.m. on Wednesday.
Okay.
So is that 72 hours or
Monday,
is that
Tuesday, Wednesday.
90?
That's 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 72 hours. Yeah. And it was cool. There was like I said, a Naiad party. Tavish, forget his last name, but he's Yosemite Crusher dude. He was like just topping out from his Naiad, so we got to share the summit with them, and then kind of watch them walk off because neither of us had done the descent. So the descent wasn't nearly as like, it was pretty straightforward, pretty easy to find, I felt like. Yeah. And luckily we got to do it in the daylight. But we were like out of water, and I was very dehydrated. I get dehydrated quick if I'm not drinking a lot of water. And I had kind of been like rationing for the last part of the day already. And so I was just so ready to get down. And like I said, we had like a lot of extra food, and our packs just felt so heavy walking off. And I mean, you have to do like a 3,000 foot plus descent to get down. And there is like a handful of rappels, but for the most part, you're just like walking down slab, and then you walk down slab forever. You end up getting into the rappels, and then from there you'd think like you're pretty close, but then you just like wind down this like gully, and then wind down through the trees, and you're just like walking. Your knees are just like completely shot, and I like had to stop multiple times and just like sit down. And I was like Evan was trying to like talk to me about something, and I was like, dude, I just like can't talk to you right now. I don't know. Like, I think he was asking like, hey, are we gonna sleep in the valley tonight? And I was like, I have no idea, dude. I need to get to the car. So we finally you finally get to like the flat ground, which seemed like forever. I'm sure without packs and after doing the nose, it really wasn't that bad of a descent, but finally get to the flat ground. And then you have like a half mile of walking just around the valley loop to get back to your car. And so we're just like walking, and every single car that drives by, we're like trying to hitch a ride, and like probably took us like 10 cars or something. And then this nice girl just stopped and she's like, "Oh, where are you going?" And we're like, "El Cap crossover." She's like, "Okay, cool, hop in," and totally gives us a ride for like the last quarter mile.
She was an angel.
That was like a really nice thing. But then we got back to the car, and man, you were just smoked, tired.
Did you guys have like the infamous treasure chest at the car waiting for you with snacks and drinks? And
not really. We had stuff in the bear box, but it wasn't anything amazing. It was probably the same stuff we had been eating on the wall.
Yeah.
Somebody offered me a beer and I turned it down. I was like, nah, I can't even enjoy a beer right now.
I just chugged a lot of water.
I needed water.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the wrap of our El Cap.
How was looking back up at it from the ground the next morning?
Dude, we actually, so the unclimactic thing is that we just left the valley because I was ready to get home to the family, to be honest. That's probably the main motivation, and we didn't really have a campsite or anything, so we could have both like bivvied in my van, but we decided to just drive to
what's it called?
Hardin Flat or whatever it is. It's like 20 minutes outside the park, and we just crashed out there and then woke up first thing in the morning and just drove home. So we didn't even get to see it the next morning. But I will say I rewatched the Alex and Tommy speed climbing the nose on Real Rock or Red Bull TV or whatever it is. I think it's Real Rock. And it's so surreal now watching that, and just like before you just like watch it and you fantasize about being up there and like what they must be going through, and then rewatching it, you're like, dude, I remember that pitch. Like I've been to there, I've done that move. It's like so amazing to like know that you like just feel like you're in that group, that community that's done it. It's pretty wild. And obviously they're free climbing it in 2 hours and we climbed it in 3 days, but nonetheless, it's just like, it feels so inclusive, like to like watch other people do it now. It's weird.
That's awesome, guys. Hell yeah.
Yeah, what an amazing accomplishment. Yeah.
Have you guys like pulled any, I don't know, like big lessons or meaning or anything from it? Like has the reality of what you've done set in? Like, have you had time to reflect?
For me, I think it just shaped my like identity as a climber. Like I don't think it shaped my identity so much as like my climbing identity. Like if that's a little subsection of my identity, I just feel like it kind of like I can identify as somebody who climbed El Cap and who's like at that level. But my other takeaway is just like, yeah, it was pretty easy. Like it doesn't feel and sound easy when we're like rehashing the story and like talking about all the difficulties that we went through. But like, I would just encourage anybody that they can do it. Like I did my homework and I did my training and my practice, but like at the end of the day, like none of it's really that hard. It's just a matter of persevering and just wanting to do it and like push on and keep going day after day and try to be fast and keep, focusing on your systems the whole time. And yeah, I'd say it was as like monumentous of an achievement as it was. It also like, I think a lot of people could do it if they wanted to. Like nothing special about me, that's for sure. So,
I would say, I don't really have a whole lot of things in my life that I feel like I'm very proud of. And it was a really nice feeling to feel proud of myself for sticking with something. Especially a dream that really, when I first thought of it, seemed so obscure. Like, yeah, you want to do that, but is that really ever going to happen? And it's like, I found something in my life that means enough to me to actually be willing to persevere through a lot and to put in the work. So it's kind of surreal, but it's interesting because it's like, it's so meaningless and it's so absurd how something so meaningless can mean so much at the same time. But at the same time, it was just another route to tick off the list. It's so strange, you know? I was riding a high for like 2 weeks, feeling like I was existing in what I call superposition, like where the universe lines up and you have this extreme amount of confidence and you feel like you could take on the world. And I thought maybe, you know, I'd finish climbing the nose and maybe I'd never be depressed again. Well, it turns out I'm still depressed. I just have something to be proud of as well, which is actually pretty nice, you know? It doesn't change much, but it does at the same time. It's kind of hard to explain.
That's awesome, guys.
It was surreal though, standing in you said how was it like the next day, but even that night, I think when we finally got back to the van and you're just like finally setting in and relaxing and you're looking up and the moon's like lighting it up, and it's like before I looked up there and I like looked up in wonder of like, what's it like up there? And now I like look up and it's still so hard to like wrap your mind around like the perspective of it all, because it's just so big. And like, how do you compress 3.5 days of adventure and work and suffering into like what you can see as just this like wall that's this big? And you really have to like this podcast, like is like, I kind of had told Evan before the podcast, like I think I've compartmentalized El Cap because like I can't really get stoked on it right now because I'm tending more towards the family and we have our plans in October, which I'm stoked for. But like until then, I can't, you know, if I didn't have any commitments, I would be like Naiad training in the valley right now. But like I can't get stoked on that because it's not realistic. So I kind of like, you know, like compartmentalize it. But going back to like that feeling of standing in the valley, you're just like, wow, like I've experienced that. I know what it's like. I see the headlamps up there at night and I know like what that feeling is like. And it's just really cool.
Yeah, to have a sense of familiarity with something so foreign is really sick. That's awesome. Nice. Max, you got anything else to add? I think we're kind of like at the end here of time and story and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's all been said. Yeah, it's a really cool accomplishment. I mean, I'm kind of curious if you think you'd ever want to try the nose in a day.
Oh, 100%. I will do the I don't want to I will try to do the nose in a day in my life, but it just, you have to
your
commit
wife's listening,
to like,
just being like, oh fuck, oh my god.
I mean, Kyle and I are planning to go in October and do it ourselves, so I definitely plan to do it again. But as far as like training for Naiad, it's some commitment there, so I just don't have the free time and the capacity to do that. But a few years down the road when the kids are a little bigger, I 100% will do that. And I think it's achievable. I really do. I don't think it seems maybe impossible until you've climbed the nose and you see all these other people doing Naiad and you're like, oh yeah, it's just, you got to move really quick and have your systems down.
What do you think the biggest shift is? Is it like, do you have to take on more risk? Do you have to be a stronger climber? Is it all about systems?
Endurance,
like, what's the main
stronger climber for sure, more endurance. Probably just being stronger and more fit, 100%.
Being able to free more?
Yeah, free and more efficient. I mean, you're not hauling, so you're way lighter, but at the same time, you're like moving over way more ground. Can't have any like faffing. You have to know the beta of the route really good too, because there's tons of little nuance here and there. And I'm sure one of the people that passed us, I think she was on like her 13th Naiad.
Ranger Michelle. That was her name.
Ranger Michelle, shout out. Yeah, I think it was like 13 or something, and I'm sure every time she still goes, she learns something new. So
yeah, for sure.
I was gonna say I understand the appeal for doing big walls in a day. Hauling sucks. It really sucks, and I understand.
Don't talk Kyle out of it. It's not.
No, it's worth it.
It's not that bad.
But if you could do it without hauling, it's just going to be more fun. You get more fun and less work. That's all.
Yeah.
I personally, I love combining two of my favorite things, camping and climbing. So I also see the appeal of hauling and taking a few days. I enjoy that, but I definitely would love to do some big walls in a day. It'll take me longer to get to that point, but I'm committed because that sounds amazing.
Yeah. plenty of smaller walls to like get you in shape for Naiad.
Yeah.
That would be equally fun. So
The thing is, as soon as you bust out the alfifi or the fifi hook, everything just slows down. So if you can avoid busting that out, that's always going to be better.